Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are here to take your sources, the articles, the research, the books you bought but maybe didn't quite finish, and distill them into the most essential nuggets of knowledge for you. Today we are tackling one of the greatest, I think, most anxiety-ridden tightropes of modern parenthood.
Oh, for sure.
How do we raise children who are financially secure, generous, and responsible without accidentally fostering a sense of entitlement?
Right.
How do we stop the creation of that, that entitled monster without becoming overly secretive about money ourselves?
It truly is a high-stakes question. I mean, because we are raising children in a consumer culture where wealth and status are constantly visibly on display.
Everywhere you look.
Yeah, whether it's through social media, peer pressure, or just, living in a relatively comfortable environment.
Right.
And that exposure, combined with that innate parental desire to shield our kids from hardship, can make the conversation around money feel fraught with silence and guilt and just deep anxiety.
That anxiety and that silence, that's our focus. Our source material today is Ron Lieber's influential New York Times bestseller, The Opposite of Spoiled: Values-Based Financial Parenting. And this is not a book about picking blue chip stocks for your middle schooler.
No, not at all.
It fundamentally shifts the entire conversation.
What's fascinating here is that the book argues money itself is almost irrelevant to the problem. The core argument is it's actually pretty simple. Children are not spoiled by money. They are spoiled by not understanding it.
By not understanding it.
Exactly. They're spoiled by the mystery, the avoidance, and the lack of transparency surrounding it. If we treat money like a secret, that void just gets filled with entitlement and confusion. It's the silence that is toxic.
Okay, let's unpack this and define our mission. Our deep dive today is to extract the central values-based framework presented in Lieber's work.
Yeah.
We want to arm you, the listener, with the age-appropriate tools and, critically, the ethical insights needed to transform those awkward, fraught money moments. The allowance request, the birthday gift, the expensive purchase, to turn those into genuine conversations about responsibility, gratitude, and community. We are moving beyond the basic budget and diving straight into the ethical foundation of finances.
And we'll explore the specific celebrated mechanisms like the give, save, spend system, but also drill down into the counterintuitive advice that often surprises parents.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that part.
Yeah, things like why linking allowance to daily chores might actually undermine the development of financial literacy and sort of responsible citizenship.
Okay, let's get started with that core thesis then. The idea that money must be treated as a conversation about values, first and foremost.
Let's do it.
The power of this book, it really hinges on that initial quote we mentioned, that foundational idea that children aren't spoiled by money. They're spoiled by not understanding it. This is the pivotal insight. If we accept this, then money needs to be treated like any other core family value, right?
Like what?
Like honesty, hard work, kindness, empathy. And that demands that we talk about it openly, frequently, and, intentionally.
Absolutely. The natural inclination of a loving parent is to protect their child from the stresses of financial life.
Of course.
We don't want them to worry about bills or feel the weight of debt, but that protection often morphs into complete avoidance.
Right, the silent treatment.
Exactly. And think about the messaging that avoidance sends. If a child never hears their parents discuss why certain financial choices are made, why we save for months for a vacation, why we wait for sales,
or just why we sometimes say no.
Yes, why we sometimes say no to a non-essential purchase. If they don't hear that, they inevitably draw their own conclusions.
And those conclusions are almost always faulty, aren't they?
Always.
They operate on the assumption that either the parents have limitless resources and are simply being, arbitrarily mean when they say no, or, conversely, that money is a source of shame and conflict, something that must never be discussed publicly.
Precisely. They see the result, the new house, the new toy, the expensive dinner, but they don't see the process.
The process, that's the key word.
The budgeting, the choices, the sacrifices, the hours of work involved. When the process is obscured, the result just feels like, a natural entitlement?
Or magic.
Or maybe a magical appearance of resources, yes.
That transactional confusion, the lack of understanding of process, is dangerous. What specific negative outcomes does Lieber suggest result from this persistent silence and avoidance?
Lieber argues this avoidance leads directly to 3 major pitfalls later in life, and they all sort of intersect.
Okay.
First is the sense of entitlement. This is that deep-seated assumption that Resources will always be provided regardless of effort or personal responsibility.
It'll just be there.
It'll just be there. If money just appears, why should they strive?
Which is exacerbated by the modern reality where kids see endless consumption on their screens.
Oh, totally.
If the parents aren't talking about the trade-offs, the external world makes every expensive item seem like a baseline necessity.
That's exactly right. And that leads to the second pitfall, which is conceptual confusion.
What do you mean by that?
Well, when they finally leave home and have to manage a credit card, a salary, a rental agreement, they lack the basic conceptual framework for prioritizing.
They've never had to.
They've never practiced making trade-offs in a low-stakes environment, and suddenly they are facing high-stakes consequences like debt.
So we've inadvertently set them up for failure by protecting them too well.
Yes. And third, this leads inevitably to poor financial decision-making. A classic example Lieber uses is the high-stakes college choice. If a child has never been involved in family financial discussions, how can they possibly weigh the cost of a private university versus a state school against their long-term career prospects?
Oh, they have no framework, no context.
They lack the necessary practice in quantifying value and consequence. Silence creates confusion. Intentional conversation creates confidence.
That's a great line.
That is the insight that must drive every action we take in this area.
I think this is where many parents hit a wall, though. It's easy to say be transparent, but it's hard to execute, especially when our own relationship with money might be complicated by our upbringing or, current anxieties.
It's a huge hurdle.
But Lieber urges us to push past that internal hurdle and integrate specific topics intentionally into the family conversation. We have to move past simply tracking expenditures to covering really complex ideas.
And this is where the curriculum of values emerges. The source material outlines specific areas where intentional teaching isn't optional. It's necessary for moral and financial development.
Let's detail those specific areas parents must integrate. The first is fundamental: earning money and the nature of work.
This is about demystifying the paycheck.
Right.
We need intentional conversations about the fact that money is exchanged for time, skill, or effort. For older children, this means talking about salaries, the concept of net versus gross income, and even concepts like taxation.
Ooh.
Lieber suggests parents discuss, in age-appropriate ways, why they go to work, what they provide, and how the value of their labor translates into the money the family uses.
So it's not just that dad gets a paycheck, but dad spends 40 hours providing a specialized service, and here is how that value is quantified.
Precisely. The second area is the necessary technical groundwork. Saving and spending wisely. How do you allocate resources? How do you defer gratification?
Okay.
This is the mechanic that the give, save, spend model addresses, which we'll discuss next.
But the ethical dimensions, which are the third and fourth points, are what truly define the book, I think. The third is teaching the critical distinction between needs versus wants.
That distinction is the foundational ethical framework. I mean, if a child believes their desire for a $150 pair of sneakers is equivalent to the need for food or shelter, they are morally and financially adrift.
Totally.
This distinction frames everything else, from shopping decisions to charitable giving.
And crucially, the fourth area, the ethical dimensions of giving to others, fostering gratitude, and maintaining humility. Because you cannot truly teach generosity until the child recognizes their own relative privilege.
Lieber stresses that understanding where you stand financially relative to others, which is the definition of understanding privilege, is an absolute prerequisite for authentic generosity and responsibility.
Right.
If the child thinks everyone lives like them, their giving is just a small transfer of excess. If they understand their advantage, the giving becomes a moral obligation.
The balanced, non-judgmental tone of Lieber's writing is what readers often praise.
It's really key.
It's not trying to make anyone feel guilty about their income. It's providing a structured, humane way to talk about the inevitable entitlement worries that arise when raising kids in a comfortable, affluent environment.
It's the permission to be transparent, and the complexity of the modern world, especially that peer pressure driven by social media, demands this transparency. If they don't get the straight story, the values, the trade-offs, the budgeting process from their parents, they will piece together a distorted, entitlement-fueled version of reality from external sources.
So once we commit to conversation, once we decide to break the silence trap, the next logical question is, what language and structure do we use to manage these tough choices?
Yes. How do we actually do it?
Okay, let's turn that foundational commitment to conversation into an actionable process. The most celebrated tool in the opposite of spoiled is the deceptively simple give, save, spend model. This framework is the engine that transforms incoming money from an abstract item into a values-aligned tool.
This model is so effective because it takes a stream of incoming funds, allowance, gifts, birthday money, odd job earnings, and immediately structurally assigns purpose to it.
Right away.
For young children, this often involves 3 labeled physical jars. For older kids, it might be 3 distinct savings accounts or budget buckets within an app.
But the principle is the same.
The key is that the division must be visual, tangible, and purposeful from the very start.
I love that immediate categorization. It teaches budgeting and allocation before the child even knows what those words mean.
Totally.
It's an instinctive assignment of value. But let's deep dive into what each category truly represents from a values perspective, because it's not just accounting.
No, not at all. Let's start with the ethical anchors. The give component promotes generosity, empathy, and connection to the community. Crucially, it forces the child to think beyond their immediate desires and immediate orbit. And the discussion shouldn't end with put 10% in the give jar.
Right. That's just the start.
The real values conversation begins with the choice of who and how much to give.
That means involving them in the decision-making process for charity.
Yeah.
Making them researchers of their own conscience.
Exactly. Lieber suggests parents require the child to research the charity or cause they want to support. Do we give to the local animal shelter?
Why?
Why? Because we value animal welfare. Do we give to a food bank? Because we understand the needs-wants distinction and recognize that some people lack necessities. That research and reflection transforms charity from a passive duty imposed by a parent into an active ethical choice, guided by their own developing moral compass.
That choice requires intellectual effort, which makes the eventual donation much more meaningful.
So much more. Then there's the save component. This is the structural foundation for future planning, discipline, and delayed gratification.
The long game.
The long game. For a young child, saving might be for a medium-term goal, like a large Lego set or a video game console. For an older teen, it becomes the groundwork for much larger financial decisions, like a car, college tuition, or an investment portfolio.
This component teaches patience and the power of compounding effort. The idea that small, consistent sacrifice today leads to a much bigger reward tomorrow.
And this is where parents can amplify the lesson. Lieber suggests using matching contributions.
Oh, that's interesting.
If the child is saving for a goal, the parent can offer to match the savings dollar for dollar once they hit a certain milestone. This introduces the concept of investment return and provides a powerful, tangible incentive for discipline,
I can see that.
reinforcing the value of planning. The save bucket is really about teaching future self-respect.
Future self-respect. I like that. And finally, spend. This is where they learn responsible current use, but perhaps more importantly, this is the category that grants autonomy. They get to make choices, good or bad, with money that is entirely their own, within defined limits.
The spend bucket is the low-stakes testing ground. This is where they learn needs versus wants firsthand in real time.
Okay.
If they buy cheap, easily broken toys, they learn a quick lesson about quality and value.
Right. Buyer's remorse.
If they buy all the cheap candy they want and then realize they don't have money for the movie ticket on Friday, they learn about opportunity cost. This autonomy is crucial. It's the practice field.
The connection point here is vital. This model instantly reinforces the core lesson that money is a tool, not a reward.
Yes.
If money were just a reward for being good or completing chores, you'd simply spend it all instantly on gratification. But because it is automatically partitioned into 3 purposeful categories, it actively supports the family's values: generosity, planning, and autonomy.
It changes the relationship with money from one of passive receipt to active deployment. Instead of money being an abstract source of power, it becomes a practical instrument for living out the family's stated values.
And we noted that a key strength of the book is the ability of this system to scale. How does Lieber suggest parents guide the transition from 3 jars to managing complex finances?
Yeah, that's a great question because, for teenagers, the physical jars become too cumbersome and, frankly, a bit childish.
A little embarrassing.
A little embarrassing. So Lieber suggests transitioning to a system involving digital accounts, perhaps with a debit card tied specifically to the spend bucket.
Okay, so bringing it into the modern world.
Exactly. This introduces real-world mechanics like managing a PIN, checking balances online, and dealing with transactions that may take a few days to clear.
So the mechanics change, but the ratios and the purpose remain. A teen might allocate 10% to give, 40% to save, maybe for college or a first car, and 50% to spend,
Right.
which now might cover gas, social activities, or even clothing that falls outside the necessity budget.
Exactly. The system transitions them from managing $3 in 3 visible jars to managing $100 across 3 distinct electronic budget buckets. It teaches the foundational architecture of financial adulthood, ensuring that as the money gets more complex, the commitment to purpose remains constant.
This framework is highly practical, but as we move on, we need to address the part of the book that often causes the most friction for parents, the counterintuitive advice that challenges our ingrained habits.
That's tricky stuff.
Yeah, let's get into it. As effective as the Give, Save, Spend system is, Ron Lieber really challenges some deeply ingrained cultural parenting habits.
He really does.
This section focuses on the lessons that run counter to what many parents instinctively want to do.
And the first, and arguably most controversial key lesson, concerns allowance. Lieber strongly advises linking allowance to responsibility, not performance.
Okay.
He argues that using allowance as a bribe or piecework payment for routine chores is fundamentally detrimental to a child's long-term financial literacy and civic development.
I have to push back on this because this goes against everything I was taught.
I get it.
I always thought paying a child to make their bed or empty the dishwasher was the perfect way to teach work ethic. You work, you get paid.
Yeah.
You don't work, you don't get paid. What is the fundamental ethical difference that Lieber draws here?
That is a very common reaction, and it touches on the core parental worry about raising lazy children.
Right.
But Lieber distinguishes between 2 concepts, citizenship and paid labor. Routine household chores like tidying one's own space, helping with family meals, keeping common areas clean, are acts of citizenship. They are intrinsic contributions required to be a functional member of the household, which is, after all, a tiny economy unto itself.
So if I pay my 10-year-old $5 to clean their room, I teach them that if they already have $20 saved up, the room cleaning is optional until they need more cash.
Exactly.
The chore becomes a conditional transaction, not a civic duty.
Precisely. It creates a transactional misunderstanding of what household responsibility actually is. If allowance is tied to performance, if you get paid to do the dishes, children miss the core adult lesson. Managing a budget is an intrinsic part of being a responsible adult. Regardless of whether you feel like performing a specific task that day or earned a bonus that month, adults manage their finances whether they love their job or hate doing the laundry.
So if we accept this citizenship model, what then is the allowance for? If it's not for chore performance, what justifies the regular income?
The allowance is meant to cover the child's specific, predetermined financial responsibilities. It acts as their first taste of a fixed income.
Ah, okay.
This is the money they use to manage their personal budget. For a younger child, this might cover all recreational spending, toys, candy, movies with friends. For a teen, it might expand to include clothes beyond basics, phone data plans, or gas money.
The implication being that the allowance is a necessary tool for management, not a reward for behavior.
Yes.
If they fail to complete their chores, the consequence should be a civic one, say, losing television privileges or being grounded, not a financial one.
Exactly. Entire allowance on Friday, the real-world consequence is failing to cover their budget line items like going out with friends on Saturday.
And no bailout.
No bailout. That setback is directly tied to poor management, setting the stage for future independent financial responsibility. The allowance, decoupled from chores, becomes the low-stakes financial lab where they learn true budgeting.
That makes the distinction much clearer. It's about teaching the discipline of managing a fixed income rather than the effort required for earning income.
That's the core of it.
Now, tied closely to this concept of learning management is the second counterintuitive lesson, the power of mistakes. The book is insistent that parents must allow kids to make small mistakes.
This often requires the deepest parental discipline, the discipline not to intervene.
Oh, that's so hard.
It is. But financial mistakes, when made with small sums early on, are described as the most powerful, visceral learning tools available. They foster what Lieber calls financial scar tissue.
We want them to develop that internal reckoning that comes from buyer's remorse, that gnawing feeling of, I wish I hadn't spent that money.
Right. And the source encourages parents to view these small setbacks not as failures, but as essential data points for growth. Lieber tells an anecdote in the book about a parent whose child insisted on buying a cheap, off-brand scooter despite being warned.
I can picture this.
The scooter broke in 2 weeks. The ensuing disappointment and subsequent need to save all over again for a better quality one was the most effective lesson in quality, value, and delayed gratification that $40 could possibly buy.
But what if the mistake isn't small? Where does the book suggest we draw the line between a powerful learning moment and a financial disaster? Parents are often terrified that teaching this freedom will translate into irresponsible debt later on.
That's a crucial question. The line is drawn by the parents, and it scales with the child's age and the amount of money at stake.
So it's relative.
It's totally relative. For a 5-year-old, the disaster is spending all their allowance and having nothing left for candy the next week. For a 15-year-old, the disaster might be blowing an entire summer's earnings on something frivolous.
Okay.
The parent ensures the mistake is financially recoverable. The money lost must be entirely the child's discretionary funds, not money needed for essentials or high-stakes savings, like college tuition.
So you let them fail, provided the failure doesn't require a parental bailout or compromise the family's basic stability. It must be a self-contained learning environment.
Exactly. If the parent steps in and refills the spend jar after a poor decision, the lesson is instantly lost.
Fun.
The key is to ask guiding questions before the purchase. Will this item last? Do you need the money for something else later? And then let the consequence teach the lesson. It builds confidence for those much larger decisions later because they have already practiced critical evaluation of purchases.
This brings us back full circle to the necessary prerequisite for all of this system to function ethically. The clear distinction between needs versus wants.
Yes. Reviewing the concepts that must precede effective teaching is critical, particularly the understanding of needs versus wants. We mentioned this in section 1, but its foundational nature must be stressed here, especially how it ties into the give category.
Tell us more about the practical application of this needs versus wants framework within the family unit. How do you actually do this?
Lieber advises making this an explicit, visible activity. Have a family meeting where you collectively list and define what constitutes a need.
Like write it down.
Write it down. A need is shelter, healthy food, basic clothing, necessary school supplies. Versus a want, video games, expensive branded clothing, eating out, high-end entertainment.
Right.
This isn't theoretical. It's a living document that they can refer back to. When a child asks for something, the first question should be, is that a need or a want?
That forces them into the ethical decision-making space. And why is this foundation essential before teaching generosity?
Well, the book stresses that before a child can effectively practice generosity, they must first understand the basic necessities of life, what a true need is. Only once a child understands that food, shelter, and security are necessities and that their new tablet is a want, can they truly grasp the moral weight of giving away discretionary funds.
That makes sense.
If they are donating money to a food bank, they understand that money is going to fulfill someone else's need, rather than simply funding a different set of wants. This transforms charity into a meaningful ethical contribution.
So allowance teaches budgeting and responsibility, small mistakes teach evaluation and resilience, and needs versus wants provides the essential ethical compass. That is a robust training system for financial independence.
A really robust system.
We've established the mechanics, the jars, the allowance rules, the calculated risk of mistakes, but we must return to the ultimate ethical core of the book. The goal isn't just to raise good managers, it's to raise grounded, generous, ethical humans who handle money well. Section 4 focuses entirely on that ethical anchor.
And the primary ethical anchor and the most challenging conversation for many affluent families is the intentional teaching of gratitude and perspective.
Right.
Lieber is very clear that humility and genuine generosity cannot flourish in a vacuum of self-awareness regarding one's own financial standing.
And what does that self-awareness practically involve? How do we introduce the concept of privilege to a child without inducing shame or defensiveness about the fact that the family is financially secure?
It requires honesty and carefully chosen language. Lieber addresses the common parental impulse to deflect when asked about money or social standing. He suggests parents avoid the binary label of rich or poor, which can feel loaded.
Very loaded.
Instead, frame the family's position as lucky. The dialogue is key here.
Give us a specific dialogue template Lieber suggests for handling this sensitive discussion.
So instead of saying, we have a lot of money because dad works hard, which can imply that people who are struggling don't work hard.
Which is a really damaging implication.
It is. Lieber recommends framing it around fortune and responsibility. We are lucky to have resources that allow us to focus on saving and giving, while others need our help just to cover their basic needs. Our good fortune means we have a greater responsibility to help.
That shifts the conversation from self-congratulation to civic obligation.
Yes.
It means the financial resources aren't just for comfort. They come with a moral mandate.
Exactly. And the discussion should tie directly to tangible comparisons that kids encounter every day. For instance, when a child pressures a parent for the newest iPhone because everyone has one.
Oh, that phrase.
The conversation shifts from consumption to perspective. Lieber advises parents to discuss the real cost of that phone, the hours of labor required to earn it, and how that money could instead be put toward college savings or charity.
Right.
By recognizing that their peer group represents a specific, highly privileged segment of society, they begin to develop the humility required for authentic gratitude.
This ethical focus, moving the discussion beyond simple bank accounts and into human empathy and the complexity of social hierarchy, is truly a major strength of the source material. It forces the parents to define their values openly.
And this leads us directly to the final overarching lesson, the definitive answer to the question of what we are truly trying to teach. Values matter more than net worth.
This is the synthesis of everything we've covered. The idea that the techniques are merely supporting players to the ethical drama.
This is where Lieber rests his case. He concludes that what children believe and feel about money, their ethical stance, their sense of generosity, their responsibility, ultimately matters more than the actual amount of money they possess or their eventual net worth.
So true.
The child who is grounded, generous, and understands the value of work, even if they inherit very little, is far more financially secure in a holistic sense than a child who inherits a fortune but lacks humility, gratitude, and a connection to the community.
So the book is, at its heart, a values-based guide first and a financial guide second. The money management techniques are simply tools to express and reinforce the desired values.
Absolutely. The author wants to raise kids who are grounded, generous, and smart about using money to achieve both of those goals. Financial literacy in this context is merely the mechanism for ethical living.
Before we move to our final thought, let's briefly summarize who this comprehensive framework benefits most and where its limitations lie, as acknowledged in the source material.
Okay. So the source notes that families seeking grounded, ethical financial literacy are the primary beneficiaries, particularly those with discretionary income who are worried about entitlement.
Right.
It's also invaluable for educators teaching basic life skills. The structure is clear, immediately actionable, and highly adaptable.
However, the book isn't a comprehensive financial manual. We must acknowledge the limitations. If you are seeking deep insights into technical strategies like advanced stock market investing, tax planning, or complex estate planning for significant wealth transfer,
Yeah, this isn't that book.
this book will fall short. Its focus is on mindset and habit formation.
Additionally, and this is an important ethical caveat from the author, the book's guidance is noted as less applicable for families facing extreme financial hardship. When resources are severely scarce and every dollar is truly in need, the conversation shifts dramatically away from discretionary spending, allowance, or managing perceived entitlement.
Of course.
Lieber's framework is optimized for those with the privilege of having resources to divide into the give, save, spend categories.
But for the vast majority of middle and upper income households grappling with the paradox of abundance and the fear of raising spoiled children, it provides an invaluable and deeply ethical roadmap.
It really does. #outro.
This deep dive into the opposite of spoiled has fundamentally redefined financial parenting. It's not about hiding bank statements or issuing harsh lectures about austerity. It's about intentional communication and the consistent application of values. We learn that silence is the actual enemy, fostering entitlement, where open conversation fosters competence and confidence.
And we gained the practical language to start those conversations, primarily through the celebrated Give, Save, Spend framework, which anchors every dollar to a specific value, generosity, planning, and autonomy.
For sure.
We also spent significant time on the importance of counterintuitive tactics, linking allowance to civic responsibility and management rather than performance for chores.
That was a big one for me.
And the critical role of allowing children to make those small, affordable financial mistakes in a safe training environment.
That's the most empowering takeaway. You are creating a safe training ground for them to develop their financial muscle.
Yes.
You're teaching them that money is a powerful tool, and like any powerful tool, it requires responsibility, resilience, and deep ethical consideration to wield effectively in the world.
The author's ultimate goal is clear: To raise kids who are grounded, generous, and smart about money by consistently treating money as a reflection and a tool to support core family values.
Right.
The technical financial lessons are simply a necessary byproduct of the ethical lessons you instill.
So what does this all mean for you right now, the listener, as you consider integrating this framework? If conversation is truly the antidote to spoiling, here is our final provocative thought for you to carry forward.
When your child receives their next dollar or their next allowance deposit, before that money disappears into the technical mechanics of the 3 buckets, take a moment to consider which specific value you want that dollar to represent. Ask yourself, what specific value is this money serving right now? By pushing yourself to define the value of the money before its use, you move beyond the mechanical process of savings and spending and directly into the heart of their ethical development. That consistent, intentional practice is how you raise the opposite of spoiled.
A fantastic, action-oriented challenge to leave us with. Thank you for diving deep with us today.
My pleasure.
We hope this framework helps you start those vital, value-aligned conversations with confidence. We'll catch you next time.